A presidential tightrope, deal-making or blackmail? Donald Trump, a man who relishes a deal. But what about when that deal involves a foreign country? And what happens when the line between negotiation and coercion gets blurry? That's the question that haunted Trump's dealings with Ukraine. At the heart of this saga is the story of frozen military aid. This aid was crucial for Ukraine, a country grappling with Russian aggression. Trump's decision to withhold it sent shockwaves through the international community. Was it a strategic maneuver by a master negotiator? Or was it something far more sinister, an attempt to strong-arm Ukraine for personal gain? The world watched, holding its breath. This wasn't just about aid money. This was about the integrity of American foreign policy, playing out on a global stage. The aid freeze, a high-stakes bargaining chip. Let's be clear, this wasn't chump change we're talking about. This was hundreds of millions of dollars in military aid. Aid that Congress had approved. Aid that Ukraine desperately needed. And Trump decided to put it on ice. Just like that. Why? The official line was murky at best. There were whispers of corruption concerns within the Ukrainian government. But the timing was suspicious, to say the least. It coincided with Trump's growing interest in a very specific deal. A deal that would directly benefit him. This wasn't just about rooting out corruption, this was about leverage. Trump was holding on to this aid, dangling it like a carrot, or perhaps more accurately, a stick. Inside Trump's playbook, minerals, peace, and a domestic win. What did Trump want? He wanted Ukraine to sign a minerals deal. Simple enough, right? Except this wasn't just any deal. This was about securing access to Ukraine's vast mineral reserves. A nice little economic win to boast about back home. But it went deeper than that. Trump fancied himself a master dealmaker, the man who could solve the world's problems. And in his mind, this minerals deal was the key to unlocking peace between Ukraine and Russia. See, by getting Ukraine on board with this deal, he could then present it to Putin as a bargaining chip. It was all part of his grand peace plan, one that, in his view, would cement his legacy as a peacemaker, never mind the fact that Ukraine might have some thoughts on the matter. Zelensky's dilemma, peace without guarantees. Enter Volodymyr Zelensky, the newly elected president of Ukraine, a former comedian thrust onto the world stage. He found himself facing an impossible choice: appease Trump or risk losing vital military aid. Zelensky was open to the idea of peace talks. Who wouldn't be? But he wasn't naive. He knew that negotiating with Putin from a position of weakness was a recipe for disaster. He needed leverage of his own, and that meant securing something crucial: American security guarantees. Zelensky was basically saying, look, I'll play ball, but if I'm going to make concessions to Putin, I need to know America has my back. A perfectly reasonable request, one might think. Section 5, alarms across the Atlantic, Europe's unease and Zelensky's options. The situation sent ripples of anxiety through Europe. America, the supposed guarantor of Western security, was now holding aid hostage for a mineral deal, and cozying up to Putin in the process. It wasn't exactly confidence-inspiring. Some European diplomats felt Zelensky had played his hand poorly. Just sign the damn deal, they urged. Appease Trump, get the aid flowing, then work with us to secure those guarantees. Others weren't so sure. Was appeasement ever the answer, especially with someone like Putin? Zelensky was caught in the middle. His country's fate hung in the balance. He needed the aid, but he also needed to protect Ukraine's interests. It was a tightrope walk, and one wrong step could send everything crashing down. Section 6, from speculation to standoff, the timeline of a transatlantic crisis. The tension had been building for weeks. Rumors swirled about Trump's intentions. Then, over one weekend, the situation reached a boiling point. Trump, after initially denying any plans to cut aid, abruptly hit the pause button. The timing was incredibly suspect. Just days earlier, Trump had spoken with Putin. Suddenly, the aid was frozen. Coincidence? Perhaps. Or perhaps a calculated power play by a president used to getting his way. The Friday showdown between Trump and Zelensky was meant to be a routine call. Instead, it became a pressure cooker of unspoken threats and veiled demands. The relationship between the two leaders, already strained, was now hanging by a thread. Section 7. The Art of the Pause. Decoding the White House's language. The White House, in its infinite wisdom, insisted this wasn't a cut. It was a pause. A temporary hold. A brief intermission before the show went on. Right. And we're supposed to believe that. Why? Let's be real, pause was code. It was code for, "We're not budging on this aid until we get what we want." It was a not-so-subtle message to Zelensky play ball, or else. The language was carefully chosen to give the administration wiggle room. They could always claim they were simply reviewing the aid package, making sure everything was on the up and up. But the subtext was clear. This was about leverage, plain and simple. Section 8. Trump's brutally transactional diplomacy, effective or reckless. Trump's approach to foreign policy was, well, let's just say it was unique. He saw everything as a transaction, a deal to be made, and he wasn't afraid to throw his weight around to get what he wanted. This brutally transactional style, as some called it, had its supporters. They argued that Trump was a straight talker, a man who cut through the diplomatic BS. He was a businessman in the White House, and he was going to get America the best deals possible. But critics argued that this approach was reckless and dangerous. It alienated allies, undermined America's standing in the world, and played right into the hands of adversaries like Putin. They argued that Trump's obsession with deals blinded him to the bigger picture, to the long-term consequences of his actions. Section 9. A legacy of distrust, the long shadow of the Ukraine aid pause. The Ukraine aid pause, if we can even call it that, left a stain on American foreign policy. It eroded trust with allies, emboldened adversaries, and raised serious questions about the motivations behind American foreign policy. Was it a blatant attempt at quid pro quo, an impeachable offense? The answer, like so much else in the Trump era, was mired in partisan politics. But one thing was clear: this wasn't how a superpower should behave. The damage was done. A dangerous precedent had been set, one that would have lasting implications for America's role in the world. The world was watching, and they didn't like what they saw.